she almost looks like a nice, reasonable person in this photograph. Um, Except then you look at her a little bit longer, you think she looks like the Joker and she's about to eat your soul. If you don't know who Anita Sarkeesian, I almost said Snarkeesian, is, then you probably don't follow video games. She is, I think of her as the Mark Waid of the feminism circles, of the feminism world. Just a cancerous person. But where Mark Waid actually provides a product, Anita Sarkeesian is more of a, I don't want to say grifter, because that's kind of defamatory. Yeah, she's a grifter. I mean, in that the product she's selling is, she's not really selling a product to people. She's selling a product using corporate funds. And by that I mean she's using Jesse Jackson and some of those Al Sharpton, some of those other guys would do a technique where they would go to companies and they would say, essentially, that you're going to have a problem with your black employees, essentially, if you don't start funding me. So if Ford Motor Company or someone can write a check for $50,000 a year to Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson, I'll keep your black employees happy. Anita Sarkeesian, I believe, is doing something similar to that with her tropes and video games idea. Companies are paying her off just because they don't want to risk bad publicity. But where Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, and the rest of those guys have actually made a living doing this, because they're actually, at least Jesse Jackson's a very good speaker, and it probably believes some of what he advocates for. I actually heard him speak years ago. I don't know if Anita Sarkeesian actually believes in anything but the bottom line. Okay, in her defense, before I actually defame her, she says, can someone build me a bot that makes anyone who tries to add me pass a very Googleable quiz like, how much money did my Kickstarter raise? Hint, it was not anywhere close to 20 million. 2, did I finish all the tropes videos that I promised? And then some. Hint, yes. So she's responding to my defamatory accusation and saying that she did produce the videos. My point is that nobody's watching the videos. The videos are not exactly blackmail, but they're just a feel-good advertisement for whatever company supported her, and for stupid kids on Twitter to donate $2 to, I don't know, her cocaine and hooker fund, I assume. Anyway, she's trying to do some damage control here, because there's a tweet under here that started it all. She's a young man came to my talk this evening in Vienna, who obviously bought into a lot of the BS make-believe hype about me, was so startled to see me in person. Does she not use commas? And realize I wasn't a fire-breathing video game destroying supervillain. No, you're a grifter. You're just out for a quick buck. But she's trying to do damage control here, because she had this tweet where she's essentially begging for money. And then people started paying attention to her again. Here it is. This is now famous tweet. She says, hey, CD Projekt Red, I'm always available for consulting cases, comma. It sure sounds like you might need it before the whole of the internet drags you, comma, for what sounds like some potentially sexist representations. Ellipse? Is that an ellipse? ... space, which we all know you've struggled with in the past. No period. Weird. I guess she's a millennial. She's probably late 30s, early 40s. No, she's probably somewhere in her 30s. Weird lack of punctuation. Oh, she does use one comma. Hey, Project Red, comma. Strange. Okay, this is the tweet that got everyone's attention, because it sure sounds like a case of blackmail. And as you see, she got 1,500 likes, and then she got 4,000 comments, which means it's called getting ratioed, as you well know. It means people are disagreeing with her very, very strongly. And this tweet brought her back into the public light, because she'd been pretty much invisible for, I don't know, maybe over a year now. And this made people start paying attention to her and looking into her. Then she responds again. Video game designers, let me help you avoid these kinds of mistakes. I want you to make the great games you're envisioning while appealing to a broader audience, and that includes not offending entire market segments. So she gets 600 likes and 1.3 thousand essentially downvotes, which is being ratioed again. She wants to appeal to a broader audience. What percentage of women buy video games? 5-10%? That's not appealing to a broader audience. That's destroying the majority of your audience by pandering to a minority of your audience. So these few tweets last week brought her back to the public light. People started paying attention to her again. They had all but forgotten her. Anyway, this article, Anita Sarkeesian's Feminist Frequency Nonprofit is Broke by John Sexton. I don't want to zoom in on that. I don't understand that choice in eyebrows. When I was a kid, those hoop earring styles and eyebrow styles were very, very briefly popular. But it's a weird look in modern day. But I mean, I'm not trying to ad homer, but it's just it's a really weird throwback to. Anyway, you may not recall Anita Sarkeesian, but she's a feminist critic who made a name for herself with a group of YouTube videos highlighting sexist tropes in video games. I'm going to say alleged sexist tropes in video games. She also received a lot of threats. If she received threats, I'm sure she did receive some legitimate threats, but I'm sure she also received a lot of threats that she didn't actually receive. A lot of times, people on the left will say they receive threats, but they won't produce them. So, like, if you receive threats, show people on Twitter the threats, or simply call the FBI. Don't talk about the threats. Call the authorities. So I press F to doubt on that. It made news when she canceled the talk in Utah over the fear that concealed carry permit holders would be allowed to bring their weapons into the venture. That doesn't even make sense. A permit is just a piece of paper. If someone wants to go to a Utah venue, and assuming they don't have metal detectors, they could simply put their device in their pocket. The piece of paper giving them the carry rights it's just a piece of paper, if you understand what I'm saying. If you're saying that people who choose to follow the law are a danger to you, but isn't it more likely that the people who choose not to follow the law are more of a danger to you? So this just seems like virtue signaling. The same year, 2014, Sarkeesian's Feminist Frequency Organization became a recognized nonprofit, and as a result, she was required to file an annual report on the money she raised and spent. See also why the author accusing Trump of rap won't bring charges. You know why people... there's like a dozen women who accuse Trump of, we'll call it rap music, won't bring charges because perjury is a felony. That means if you give sworn testimony and you lie, you're holding yourself open to liability. That's why they won't bring charges. According to these reports, Sarkeesian's group, which had 2 employees plus a producer, had raised and spent about $1.6 million over the past 5 years. But it seems that is coming to an end. A lengthy profile of Sarkeesian, published by Polygon this week, reports that earlier this year she laid off her 2 employees and stopped taking a salary. Her salary history, I think in the first year she was taking a $50,000 salary, and then she bumped it up to something like $70,000, and then she bumped it up to like $180 or something. But the thing is weird is that the whole time she had 2 volunteer employees working for her while she's making over 6 figures. So hats off to her. You're a hell of a I don't know, I guess you're a con artist in that you're able to get people to produce free work for you, such as that work is. Earlier this year, Sarkeesian decided the feminist frequency needed to change. Yeah, she stopped. You need to get paid, and you stop getting funding. She ceased taking a salary and laid off her Is it really laying someone off if you don't pay them? Laid off her co-creators and close friends, Ebony and Petite. If they're your co-creators, how do you legally lay them off? I mean, do you have a nonprofit or an LLC or something? Are they your employees or co-creators? How do you lay off a co-creator? She closed her offices and stopped making videos. Oh darn! You can make a video in your room, in your home, in your dining room or something, with a cell phone. So I don't know why she needs an office. She was paying like $2,000 a month for an office, which I don't know where that is. Must have been in like Iowa or something, because it's very, very cheap. But again, you don't need to pay $2,000 a month for an office. She could do it all from her kitchen table if she wished. Feminist Frequency is still going, sort of. It's on YouTube, but you'll see. It's now mainly focused... Oh, Feminist Frequency on YouTube. You can go check it out, and you can downvote it all you wish, because they don't show likes. Though, a little-known fact, likes are still registered, even if you disable likes and comments. You can't leave a comment, but you can click the dislike button, and the dislike will still show up on the... when you look up the history of the channel, it still shows up. Kind of weird. Feminist Frequency is still going. It's now mainly focused on a regular podcast hosted by Adams, Petite, and Sarkeesian. It's purely voluntary organization. So if I understand this right, Sarkeesian was making $70,000 at first, and then she was making over $100,000. But the other two girls are working for free. How does that work out? Any want to answer that one, Sarkeesian? Or you just want to block me on Twitter? I'm not on Twitter, but if I was, I'd probably be already blocked. Sarkeesian has no pat answer to the question of why she's decided to move on. No, it was just time. The answers are more complicated. Partly it's about money. Fundraising is always a struggle, she says. Paying my staff is... But you weren't paying them, were you? Is always a struggle. I'm capable of fundraising. I learned how to do it through the process of running a nonprofit. I didn't get into this work to be a fundraiser. And what mighty important work you are involved in. Feminism in a first world country. Wow. That is... I don't know, maybe advocate for feminism in the Middle East. How about that? How about, stopping child marriage? I can't say the R word on YouTube, but stopping child marriage in Africa and the Middle East. Oh, but that would be like racist or something, because they're Middle Easterners. Feminist Frequency relied heavily on corporations willing to fund the sort of work that looks into intersectional feminist critiques of commercial art. What a word salad that is. When corporations make financial commitments to nonprofits, they like to make song and dance about their noble obligations, most especially when it portrays them in a positive light. Of course, it's a commercial enterprise. But they're also prone to nickel and diming once favorable media coverage fades. Sarkeesian won't talk specifics, but it's clear that corporate generosity crept away once she outlived her usefulness. Now, this is what got my attention. Anita Sarkeesian did outlive her usefulness. She seemed to have, all of a sudden, just... I think of her as like a paper dragon. People thought she had so much power, and then all of a sudden, it just overnight, it seemed to just vanish. When I read that tweet of hers, basically asking CD Projekt Red for money, it seemed like all of a sudden everyone realized, who is this chick and why is she shaping public discourse? Who gave her so much power? And the answer is, well, her Twitter followers gave her power, and the corporations gave her power. You think, oh, well, she has a lot of influence, but then you look at her YouTube channel, and no, she has a lot of followers, but she doesn't have a lot of interaction. Even on her Twitter or her YouTube, she's not getting a lot of interaction. She's not influencing public discourse as much as people thought she was. She was 6 years ago, but it just seemed to have just overnight gone. Earlier this month, Sarkeesian noted that fundraising problems on her Twitter feed while taking a shot at electronic arts. Fem Frequency has been a nonprofit on the front lines of this issue for years, constantly struggling with funding. People think of nonprofits, if you don't have much familiarity with nonprofits, and then you find out that the CEO of the nonprofit is, making $150,000, which, depending on where you live, is not a whole lot of money. And I'm not saying that you don't deserve to make a living running a nonprofit, but when the nonprofit is taking in a very, very small amount of money and you have a salary of, say, I don't know, 150, and you're not sharing it with the other two co-founders, okay, why aren't you sharing that money? You could have three people making $50,000, and you could set up your business somewhere where the living is much, much cheaper. Definitely not California, or somewhere in the boonies of California. You don't need to be in LA where she's making 150 and her two co-founders are making zero. How does that? Doesn't seem fair to me. Okay, it says she finds out that EA has donated $1 million to nonprofits working to end bullying and online harassment. I don't know if you need to donate $1 million to end online harassment. That seems excessive. People harass everyone online, and I think they found out that it's mostly women doing the harassing, which is kind of funny. I think I could save you $1 million and just give a little warning to people that they just kind of need to toughen up online. If you get a threat, then call the police or call the FBI. But if you're playing a video game and someone is just calling you the N-word over and over again, just mute them. Some facts: they didn't speak up during Gamergate at all. Why would they involve themselves in your dumpster fire? Time Frequency has been a nonprofit on the front lines of issues for years, constantly struggling with funding. Okay, on the front lines of this issue, you're not at war. You're in a first world nation talking about feminism. And yeah, it's great. Feminism's awesome to some extent. But I mean, what rights are you fighting for? You have the vote. The 19th Amendment, and then was in the 60s where the federal USC passed the Equal Pay Act. Yeah, it was in like the late 60s. The federal government passed the Equal Pay Act, and then feminists nowadays are still saying, well, women only make 80% of what a man makes. That doesn't make any sense. If I could pay a female employee 80 cents on the dollar, I would never hire a man. Your logic is blown the F out with the logical reasoning ability of a fifth grader. Why would companies hire men if they could pay women 3/4 of on the dollar? Anyone have an answer for that? Anyone? Anyway, if you're being paid less than the male employee next to you for equivalent work, and you're putting in the same hours, you're getting the same product done, call your district attorney and start the process rolling for a class action lawsuit. It doesn't make sense. Women work less hours and they work easier jobs, and they get paid less on average for doing different jobs, different labor. Anyway. Last week, Sarkeesian was seen offering her services, does that sound sexy? To the creators of a forthcoming game, Cyberpunk 2077. That's like somebody saying, I have cancer and I'd like to share it with you. On the grounds that the game might get dragged by her and her cronies by the whole of the internet for some potentially sexist representation. That sounds like blackmail because it is blackmail. It sounds like racketeering and conspiracy and just, I mean, actually, it does sound technically. It kind of sounds like the tortious interference with the advantageous business relations. That concept, interference with contract, but it also sounds like that's civil. But it also sounds like criminal blackmail and criminal conspiracy. And if you read her Twitter and you go back to June 15th, you'll find that tweet, and it's just she got just ratioed. Cyberpunk 2077 is expected to be a big release. The game was introduced at E3 this year by Keanu Reeves, who plays a character in the game. And then this is her tweet. I'm always available for consulting, because it sure sounds like you might need it before the whole of the internet drags you for what sounds like some potentially sexist representations, which we all know you've struggled with in the past. So this is the exact same as Al Sharpton telling Coca-Cola, hey, your black employees are going to give you a problem with the black union if you don't pay me my $50,000 a year consulting fee. That's just what it boils down to. Or Anita Sarkeesian is looking for, I don't know how much her consulting fee would be, but she can make a little bit here, make a little bit there. But it's weird that she just doesn't have any power anymore. This is effing turdikin of facile takes, genre ignorance, and milquetoast body squeamishness, which is maybe not ideal from the makers of a game literally called Cyberpunk. Oh, okay. They're talking about after players gun down the enemies in the compound, they find the kidnapped women and another NPC lying naked in a bathtub filled with ice, with her eyes rolled back in her head and body glistening with water. That's a weird way to describe it. Describe somebody wet as being glistening. Player must carry her in the arms out in the light to the waiting paramedics. Okay, it's a video game. I think take things a little seriously. Feminist Frequency's annual reports demonstrate that the group was down to its last $30,000 in January. But as the video below points out, the real problem isn't just a lack of corporate donors. That's one of the problems. It's a lack of public interest. That makes me giggle. The group has more than 200,000 subscribers on YouTube, but the average podcast released this year only had a few thousand listeners. That's not much impact for a group that spent several $100,000 in 2018 on salaries and other expenses. Okay, this is the thing about people. She kind of lost her heart on for the business, or people lost their heart on for her. They're not interested in her anymore. One of the reasons, she would actually have more interaction if she enabled likes and comments. I mean, people would downvote the video and people would just drag her nonstop. But it would also bring more traffic to the site, because if you only have a few thousand interactions, then for a channel her size, that is sending the message that what you have to say isn't very important. And if you say you disable likes and comments, then that means you're scared of commentary. Anyway, I don't think they have comments on this because did you have comments? I thought this was an archive. I don't know. I guess archives have comments now. She's really not bad looking. She's only 36. She learns to smile and works on a better personality. Maybe she can find a man. Oh, no, you didn't. Oh, my gosh. 36. She is a kind of a hard-looking 36. I mean, she's still pretty, but she looks, I don't know, fighting for the man and feminism must be really aging on you. Twit looks 50, get glasses. Who? Yeah, that's the thing. She just kind of... So she was, 30 when she started this stuff? Even back then she had those unusual eyebrows. Yeah, who is she? Trying hard to care. This comment is more relevant than Sarkeesian, more honest too. On the grift. Yeah, she's a grifter. Allegedly. Who would have guessed that screeching social justice warrior Harridan isn't a long-term employment option? I think Sarkeesian... I wonder what Sarkeesian did before 30, before she was SJW. I assume she has a bachelor's. I mean, she went to school, got out at 22. What was she doing from 20 to 30? I would be curious. I know she's... Oh, she's connected to the Gamergate nonsense. Yeah, her and Zoe Quinn. Yeah, she was ground zero in the extreme left's attempt to shove political correctness down the throats of gamers, and gamers weren't having it. That's when she started up the standard leftist canard of receiving death threats. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, death threats that they can never prove. All you have to do is show a screen cap. That always happens when leftists publicly embarrass themselves with something they say or do, and conservatives call them out on it. They immediately start playing the victim, claim they received death threats, and blame their accusers for their purposeful mistakes. The lamestream media laps it up. Exactly. She was one of the architects of Gamergate, and the scandal became derailed, becoming all about what she and the other female dogs suffered through their own actions instead of the violation of journalistic ethics and integrity. Okay, what I remember about Gamergate, was it Zoe Quinn who had a game called Depression Quest? Sounded like an interesting concept to me. I mean, it's not really, you think of it as a game, but more of a kind of a therapy type thing. It sounded interesting because a lot of people suffer from depression. So I could see how that would appeal to a certain market. I'm not bagging on the game or mental health. That's fine. If you can sell it and people buy it, great. But there was allegations that the media reviewers of the games were having sex with some of the women who were making the games. And they didn't reveal, like, if I'm a reviewer and I'm reviewing somebody's game, but I'm having sex with that person, in any scientific paper, you admit your biases first and foremost. And in a review, I mean, ultimately, it's not that big a deal. It's not life and death, but you are asking people to spend $50 on a game, and you're having sex with the person who made the game. Obviously, you have a sexual interest, not a financial interest. you have some kind of duty of care to the people who are reading your article, and they think they're getting an unbiased review, and it turns out you're getting your enjoyment from the person who's making the game. It kind of makes it seem like maybe you're not going to be as impartial and unbiased as a person would be if they weren't having, if they weren't getting their enjoyment from the person. Funny how the police are never involved investigating these death threats, and the news never follows up on it. Yeah, if I got a death threat, I would call the FBI immediately. Go woke, go broke, you ignorant, cherry-picking, self-sabotaging attention whore. Thanks to your dumbass, uninformed people believe Gamergate was about harassing women when it was really about a mediocre game designer who slept with multiple critics in return for favorable reviews of her poorly designed game. Your part was brought about by you pointing out problems which may exist but is open to interpretation based on each individual, and when you were called out on some of your BS, you played the victim. In addition, you classify any criticism of yourself as harassment. You're like Disney. Oh, damn, this guy's going off. Unable to figure out why your numbers for Star Wars ain't in the black after trashing and insulting your fans who merely explained why they didn't like your product. Of course, what can you expect from a feminist who most likely doesn't even know who Roberta Williams is? Zoe Quinn wishes she had the talent Roberta Williams has. She has more talent in one figure than Zoe Quinn could ever hope to have in her entire body. Finally, you're already a consultant for Cyberpunk, Anita. It is very simple. If you want to have a blockbuster game, do the opposite of what you say should be in the game. Damn. When did she become a consultant for Cyberpunk? She was still attacking Project Red and trying to shame them into hiring her, and they were ignoring the nasty ass. They were. I don't think they ever responded to her, which is funny. I mean, how do you publicly blackmail someone for a job? And the best thing is they didn't have to respond to her because the public responded for her. I knew there were a lot of pestering, angry B-words out there. I just never knew they could make a living at it. Well, not anymore, I guess. She's kind of like a professional ex-wife, except she wanted her husband to support her loser friends, too. There's an entire industry of journalists, political correctness, SJW activists, which make a living from attacking games and gamers. And gamers are like, what? She's still a thing? Pretty much. She's the latest version of Jack Thomas, who also whined endlessly about the content of video games. He eventually was disbarred. She's finally losing her position as well. The only reason she was taken seriously by anyone while Jack Thomas was derided out of the gates is because, White Knights. But the White Knights just disappeared. Nobody's sticking up for her. It's kind of strange. You can read her Twitter and just have a laugh. You don't have to subscribe to Twitter, be signed in. You can just Google or DuckDuckGo Anita Sarkeesian Twitter. It's awful when a scam artist and their scams go broke, said no one ever. She's got a lot of very wealthy friends, so I'm sure she'll be okay. I'm sure she is also okay. When they say feminist frequency is broke, they're not saying Anita Sarkeesian is broke. I'm sure she's doing just fine. I hope this is the last we hear of her in any kind of news. Best thing would be for her to vanish and live off her wealthy family like most hipsters do. Gamergaters are still mad that women play video games. Well, that's kind of the thing, is that women don't really play video games. Some women may play video games, a certain small percentage. But games are similar to comics in that a certain small percentage of women, girls and women, will read comic books and play video games. That's different than saying that they buy them, if you follow me. The company is concerned with who buys these products, not necessarily who plays them. You can think of someone playing it for free. It doesn't affect the company's bottom line. Women will play games, read comic books secondhand. They're not buying them. You have to market the game to people who are actually spending coin on them. Anyway, closing comments. Hazelwood says, running out of other people's money, perhaps you'll learn to code. Nice. This is Hot Air, Anita Sarkeesian's feminist frequency. I just punched it into DuckDuckGo, Anita Sarkeesian, or I punched in feminist frequency, broke. This one of these will come up as an archive. I'm not familiar with this website at all. There was a thing where she was selling her video games. She said one time she said, yeah, she's a gamer, she loves video games, and then another time there's a video of her saying, I don't play video games, I wish I had the time to play video games, but I'm too busy to play video games. There's a video of that out there. It seems like two conflicting points. And then there's a a later video where she's selling her video games and her video game systems. She's 36. I know people in their 40s who are still gaming. Why would a 36-year-old, well, this is when she was 34, 35, why would she sell her video games and her gaming system? Unless the only reason she bought them was for research. So you're saying she's not an actual gamer. She's just involved in an industry to as a parasite, essentially, as a parasite. Wow, those are some hard years. Anyway, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and leave a like and a comment.